I was talking about my mother-in-law and her partner who were delayed for hours at Bristol Airport yesterday, and it just got us talking here in the office, and we're wondering if customers are entitled to any compensation for big delays, and do you know what you're entitled to? Well, to help me on this, I'm delighted to be joined on the line by the editor of Air and Travel magazine, Eoghan Corry. Eoghan, how are you?
Good morning, Jennifer. I'm also traumatised by a denied boarding on a bus there and looking for my Leap card. What do you mean you can't tap your card? Every other country in Europe does that. But
they don't have the software, apparently. They don't have the software. It is infuriating. And we've gotten a huge reaction to this because I think in general, people don't really know what they're entitled to. I mean, they don't tell you before you get on a flight, or maybe they do and they just don't read it. But can I ask you, how long do you have to be delayed on a flight to be entitled to compensation?
The magic is 2 hours. That's when you start getting your voucher. You get your €5 food voucher. Once it goes to 3, you're entitled to cash, and 5, you're entitled to other rights. Now, it's a very complex, and it varies on the length of the journey, the length of the delay, and there are a couple of important riders. One of them is really relevant to your mother-in-law. On the tarmac doesn't count. Once you're on the tarmac, you are now in the hands of air traffic control, and the captain is waiting for a slot to take off, and that generally negates all that complex Rubik's cube of regulations. You can find them all very easily online. EU 261 is the regulation. One of the first pieces of important to come from Europe really changed everybody's rights in terms to airlines. They were being kicked around a bit. Airlines can't kick them around anymore. And in the years since, it's become more consumery and less airline-y. So it's a good piece of legislation, and lots of people have got compensation out of it.
That is good news. Can you refuse to get on the plane? I mean, that's a bit of a sneaky move to get people sitting. My mother was sitting on the plane on the tarmac for 2 hours with no trolley service. Can you refuse to get on the plane or not?
Yeah, you can. If you refuse to get on the plane, all your rights are negated. And also, it's a really important one, by the way, if you check in late, you don't have rights. Oh. And that means that some of the airlines can push the check-in, the required check-in a little bit forward. You know the way they tell you to be at the gate half an hour before the flight, and the flight never boards? But that, again, gives them, it gives them this sort of way out. If, were you at the gate? Did you check in on time? All of those sort of things. So there are all these little things you've got to watch. But this is really, really great. The airlines have got really slick at handling compensation and paying compensation. Our biggest airline, let's face it, our biggest airline in Ireland by a margin is Ryanair. They have a little piece on the website. What was the flight? How long was the delay? They'll know all of that. And here's your compensation. And it goes back to you.
Wow.
And it goes back within 48 hours. And that happened because of the complete madness of the pandemic, when everything was just collapsed. The whole world as we knew it in aviation just fell apart. So they are very, very good at doing it. Aer Lingus are also quite slick and quite good at it. When you are delayed, this is the process. Remember this. First to the airline, back to the airline. Usually there's a little place on the website saying where you delayed, in you go, give all the details. They examine it. They decide to pay compensation or not. Then, if you're fighting with your airline, it's not a good idea for one person to fight with the airline. It wrecks your head. It fills your head space. It does all of that. There is a consumer website that looks after all of that process for you. Very simple name, flightrights.ie. But beware, again, there's other websites calling themselves Flightright and flightrights.co.uk or flightrights.com or whatever, and they charge. This is a free website, a free government website run by the Commission of Aviation Regulation, and it says, what are your problems with the airline? Send us the details and we'll bring it up with the airline. And that means there are obviously chancers all the time trying things that, where they aren't entitled to compensation, but it means the process is out of your hands and a genuine case will be paid out. But first go to the airline, second to flightrights.ie, and remember the .ie. Google, by the way Google operates, they charge somebody to land top of the page. So if you Google flight compensation, the first 2 or 3 entries are guys that are going to charge you for what is essentially a free service. So go to the government one, the Commission of Aviation Regulation, flightrights.ie.
Somebody just texted in saying we got delayed from Morocco. I got an email from the airline, filled out a quick form and got $2,000 back.
It depends on the length of the flight. And
okay.
Some of our flights are Morocco, some of our flights are Canary Islands. And then if you're dealing with long haul, the compensation can be substantial. And if you're dealing with train and ferry, by the way, it can go on a percentage of your tickets, 25% of your ticket for a delay, 50% of your ticket from the day. I think it was, David was talking about getting the money back into his account from delayed trains in London.
Yep.
That's a European regulation that right across Europe that train services, ferry services, everybody who has, the legislation came in a little bit after the airline one, but it's still very consumery.
Okay, consumery. I love that word. Somebody texted in, you mentioned it as well, the EU 261. Somebody said, Jen, I was delayed for 5 hours going out of Portugal. EU 261 rule got me €400. It was announced delayed only 2 hours before takeoff. We got a €15 voucher but couldn't use it in half the restaurants. So can you explain what is...
there's another thing.
Go on.
The voucher that won't be accepted. You know, you're really frustrated. Everybody, all your mates, you have a small child, all of that, and the whole thing is going astray. And you get your voucher, and you say this is great, and you start wandering around Charles de Gaulle, in my case, and find a restaurant who actually takes the voucher. And you know it's been a long day, and that's when you burn the terminal down. And it's a perfectly proportionate response to the voucher not being accepted by the restaurant.
What is the EU 261 rule? So I've heard this twice now. Can you explain a little about that?
It starts off at 2 hours, goes up to 5 hours. If there's a cancellation, there's a separate set of rights. It's a catalogue of your rights according to the length of the journey, the length of the delay. And if there's a cancellation without 14 days notice, there's a compensation as well. Airlines are very grumpy about this because when it started, there was a whole load of sort of get-out clauses. Usually weather is one of them, usually strikes is one of them, air traffic control strikes you referenced at the start of the item. But now, as case law comes up right across Europe, I can see the special circumstances getting fewer and fewer. Security is one, safety is one, bird strikes is one. We had a case last year where the pilot died and it wasn't regarded as a special circumstance. The airline's pretty grim about that. Obviously, the pilot didn't die in mid-flight. He died before he was supposed to show up. But being modern aviation, even if a pilot dies in mid-flight, there's another one to land you. And the aviation guys will tell you that planes virtually fly themselves. So you're never really in danger in the flight. But there are very few special circumstances left that the airline says we do not need to pay you compensation. Strikes is one. It's the biggest disruptor. In last month alone, 800 Ryanair flights were cancelled because of air traffic control strikes and the national strike in Italy.
Whoa, that is crazy. I know there's a lot of people thinking about getting out of the misery of the rain over the next couple of weeks, and still a lot of holidays to be had before the end of the year. What is the likelihood of delayed flights? Can you give me a ballpark? What are you thinking? Would you say, there's a very high percentage that your flight's going to be delayed or cancelled or even cancelled?
Low percentage. We've had a good summer.
Okay.
We've had a better summer than we had last summer. For one of the things is that the airports are better. They've got staffed up. They were slower in getting people hired and getting people trained in and getting the security clearances.
That's right.
Fewer bags lost this summer. Their French air traffic control is the one that really impacts everyone because they don't allow overflights if they go on strike. We haven't seen very many of those. They've been on strike 60 times this year, but each time the impact has been much lower. The last time I think we would have had 21 flights a day to France. We lost about 5 of them. So don't fret. It's your flight will get there on time. Now we have a little bit of trouble with the late Ryanair wave going out, let's say 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. A lot of trouble last year because the accumulated delays. A Ryanair aircraft, like a Saturday's Child, works hard for a living. It takes off and lands 6 times. goes from country to country. So a delay somewhere along the way will mean it's late getting back to Dublin and late taking off the late wave. Not as big a problem this year, although we have had some dramatic days. And next Sunday is the busiest day of the year at the airport. It's going to be nearly 120,000 passengers going through. Everything seems to be working at the airport. Those big security queue delays we had last year, no sign of those at all. It's 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for security to get through security. So no need to arrive really early at the airport like your mother-in-law did in Bristol. It's going to work, but it is going to be a busy day. Car park is where the pressure is on as well. The red car park is full.
Okay. Eoghan, thank you so much for all that great advice. There we go. That is Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. That was enlightening, wasn't it? Okay, so in layman's terms, if you are looking to see what your rights are, if you're looking for compensation on the flight, go to the airline website first. That should be an easy process. If not, then there's other flight information. What was that website he said again? I'll get that for you again. But go to the airline website. You should get it all there. Love that.
Jen Zamparelli on RTE 2FM.